Alright, we're going to do a video on the older style Honda ATC pole starter. This is for a 81-200. There's your rubber gasket. You've taken your flange gasket for that to help seal it up. You've already taken it off the trike, so you've removed the decompression cable. Now I don't have the decompression lever cable system in here, but I do keep this boot on that goes to it because this boot helps keep water out of it in the winter or in the summer, depending on where you're riding. It's just easier to do that. Rope snapped on this one today anyways. I never greased the rope, so gave it a couple pulls and it snapped. Now, these aren't as hard as you think. Take fingers, you hold this down, you take this C-clip here, pop that off, comes right off. Just a little C-clip. See if I can get it in my palm, give you a better look. There you go. You'll notice on this post that it has a flat side. Well, that's for these washers, these bronze washers. Make sure you get them in the same order because I've had issues with that before. And for that C-clip, so that the notch that kind of keeps it in one spot, it lines up against the flat side of the post. You pull this metal cover here off. There's a spring on the bottom. See the spring? Okay, sometimes that stays on, sometimes it falls off. That really doesn't make a difference if it falls off, but you will need that inside. Now, inside here you have your 3 ratchets. That's what turns your flywheel. And on each ratchet there is a spring that links to the next one. So that way they creates the snapback, so when you let the recoil back or when it's running, the ratchets don't just up and fall out and get caught in your flywheel and make a whole lovely big mess. So it is important that you check these ratchet springs and make sure that they are in good condition, because I have a friend who has some broken ones and he's got a problem. So you pull each individual spring out, look at it, should have a little bar going down on each. Like I said, there's a hole in the ratchets. Some ratchets have holes all the way through, some don't. I don't know the difference between the two. I've seen it both ways. And I don't know if some are aftermarket or not, or replacement ratchets or whatnot, but each spring should have the prong going down and going into each ratchet. Now we'll pull our ratchets out. Like I said, I've seen different types of ratchets before. Some have a beveled edge on one side where they sit in and some don't. So pull the ratchets out. There's another bronze washer inside this drum in here that we will deal with when we pull this out. So you turn it back to the left when you're pulling it out. Take it over and smack it, and you got the other bronze washer in your hand. When you reassemble it, you want to make sure you don't drop that washer in there and not get it back in. So now we have our metal drum, which is the older style, which my Honda shop here could not get for this pole starter, and I had to buy one on eBay. Why they couldn't get it, why they were only getting the plastic ones, I have no idea. I've already pulled the rope out. There is a hole for the rope right there. You can't see it real well, but there is a hole. You'll see it when you're looking, and that's where your rope goes through and runs through here. I've got my new rope right here. It's already greased. It's coming out of another pole start. It's already got a knot in it as well. So that saves me some trouble. But I will have to get this rope out of the other pole start handle. Now, inside this housing, there's the spring. We're going to rewind this spring. I'm going to purposely pull it out and rewind it to show you what happens if you just pull your pole starter out. You just pull the drum out and the spring comes out. Because you need to be able to get that back in. Because otherwise, you don't have a pole start and you're going to be very upset for a very long time. And it's not as hard as you think to redo it. There's a metal tab in here that my finger's resting on right there. That metal tab. Make sure it's not bent out, bent in, and that it's not broken off. Because that can cause some issues with when you're respringing this. These are a little bit sharp. This is, an 81. So it's got some sharpness. I got some rust in there. Spring's a little dirty and stuff, but otherwise this pull start's in really good condition. So what we're going to do is there is a notch on the pull start main spring. This tab here on the spring on the end, the outside end. Let's get it there. See that tab? Okay. Goes the same direction as your flat spot on your tab here, where you've got the cutout on the housing. See that flat area there? That's where you got that tab going on the spring. So you're going that direction. If you can remember that, or you can remember you go clockwise every time, you'll never have to worry about winding it in backwards. So what you do is you insert the spring, hold it on the edge with your thumb, and you start winding it around. Okay? Your main goal is to hold the very first part. Kind of keep it in place. The rest of it you're going to just wind into it by letting it kind of push up against the outside edge. These pull starts are a little more difficult than the newer style, simply because they're deeper than the plastic drum pull starts. So, we've got it there. Oh, come on now, we just did you. If you got to bring the spring back in a little bit to kind of wind it up some so it sits in the metal housing, so be it. You can rotate the drum as needed, but your main goal is to keep the spring down while you're getting your initial passes. Because if you don't keep it down, it's not going to go. You can use gloves. I have some issues with gloves on this one because of the depth. So I took the gloves off. I know this spring isn't sharp and it's not going to cut me, but that doesn't mean they won't. But if you're going to use gloves that you can make sure are a good fit so they don't get caught in between your fingers or in between the spring and what you're trying to wind up, or else you're going to have to start all over multiple times, and that sucks. So your goal is to keep holding the spring, keep winding it in deeper and deeper each time. And you can get away with just, winding the spring, or sometimes it'll be more comfortable if you actually rotate the housing. Either way works. Whatever works for you. With this one, it's working out okay with me just winding the spring, holding the housing straight. Just try and keep your fingers holding the spring down, so that way you've got nice, good tension there. With this style, once you get it towards the center, you can just kind of twist it a little bit and it'll drop in. And the spring is now rewound in there. Now, with some of these, like this one, it likes to touch up against this center pole. I got a little trick for that to keep it from being against the pole, because you're going to need that not up against that pole when you try and put this drum back in, because it won't sit. So I will show you in just 1 second how to do that. It's real easy. Take a little bit of grease, dab it on your finger, move this center part of the spring over, get it down there on the base. Ain't gonna hurt nothing because it actually needs a little grease anyways. And the grease, kind of keep that spring away just enough where you can take this drum, see how it's got a little lip on it? That's where it hooks onto the spring. You want that away from where you're going to be connecting it. So you just kind of push it in and drop it in. It goes in a lot easier than if you're sitting there trying to shake the whole thing so that spring moves so that you can get the drum in. And you just can wind it a little bit, make sure it's connected to the spring. Now, we're going to be redoing the rope. So we're looking for, inside, you won't be able to see it with my camera or anything. It's actually, on this one, it's exact opposite of the notch where you're supposed to let the rope hang out. There's a notch on the drum. Let's see. Well, there's a notch right here And exactly opposite of that, right here, is where the rope goes through the drum. But you're supposed to be able to get it around there and have it come up through that notch while you're winding it up, and then you feed the rope through here, through your outlet. So I'm going to go and I'm going to pop this rope in there. Now remember, I've already got it tied on one end. You can also burn the end of the rope. It does help. That's what I'll do right now. With this type of rope, you burn the end, get a little hot. Watch your fingers, because this will hurt your fingers too if you go too hot and too long on the end. So wind it out a little bit to where that's kind of pushed out there. And you just force feed the rope through into this open, wider corner here. Going with the paraneedle nose. When you're ready, once you've wound it up, you'll go in with paraneedle nose. I usually make like a double knot, or if you've got the right rope, one knot should be sufficient. When you're ready, you're going to end it right there, and you're going to be pulling your rope out. So that way, because that's about the only place you can grab it. Now I've seen where they want you to go through, bring it around and then go through this little divot here, and I just don't take the time for that. I'm going to wind it approximately 5 times because I like it tight. So my rope's right there right now, just barely on the spring. I got a little bit of tension on the spring, but not enough to recall it back. And I'm right here where your shift selector is. I'm going to wind it 5 times from there. So I'm going to turn the housing. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now you got to go back up to this corner. You got to hold this. You got to bring your rope through. The only reason I wind it so many times is because I usually use a much longer rope than this. Because I got some friends that seem to think they're Superman and they like to give it all it's got. Pull this thing all the way out to the end every time. Now, I'll take a pair of vice grips and I will go inside the outside lip, clamp that rope down. So that way, it ain't moving. Now you're going to take your washer, and you can re-grease it if you need to. This one doesn't need new grease. Yeah, I had to take it off the screensaver. Now there's that flat spot on the washer. Doesn't matter which side it goes down on it, unless you can see some major wear, as long as you're putting the right washer back in. You put it right down on that. Now, we're going to put our ratchets back in. And if your ratchets were bone dry or a little crusty, I recommend adding a dab of grease in here and a dab of grease on the ratchet. So that way they have nice fluid movement. And you're going to take your ratchet springs. You're going to go into each little hole and you're going to go to the next ratchet over. And they don't put a lot of pressure on them. It's not like you have to worry about your ratchets popping out. You just keep it, you add the 3 springs. To each ratchet. For some reason my fingers don't want to work right now. There. Now, we're going to take this cover with the spring, and the open spots go where your ratchets are. And it'll sit right in. You push that down. You're going to take the top washer, put that back on. And you're going to take this C-clip, and you're just going to, I can do it with my hands, but some people might need pliers. You're just going to put it right there, holding this top down. And you're going to have the opposite side of the C biting onto the flat edge. So where it's got the center prong, which actually, keeps it in one spot, it's going to go against the flat side of the post. Now, because that's done, and we still got all this rope out, I'm going to take this rope and I'm going to feed it right through here, through the hole that brings everything out. I'm going to leave that vice grip on there for right now because I don't want it to recoil back in. You take the old rope and pull it through. You're going to go in here with the flathead screwdriver. You're going to pry out the metal base that actually holds your rope from pulling through this pull handle. If you don't have that metal base, you got problems, because you ain't going to keep your rope in there. I don't care how many knots you put, it's going to pull right through the rubber. This metal base right here. Now, you've got to feed your rope through here. It's not as easy as it looks. I've actually widened this hole out a little bit with a flathead screwdriver a couple times because, like I said, I got friends that think they're Superman. And I usually go in with a pair of needle nose and manage to grab my rope sometimes. Or you can take and you can twist your rope, which creates a pressure, and it'll push through. There we go. I pushed it through. Now you're going to get it on this metal right here. And this is an already greased rope. This rope has been greased. You slide that metal base in, and you're going to take and you're going to knot it. And I'll grab the end with a pair of pliers and I'll give it a good nice tug so that way it don't come unknotted. Because I've had that happen too. Thought the rope snapped and it wasn't the rope that snapped. The knot was not tight enough. Then you're going to pull it nice and tight into that metal base. Then you're going to push that metal base back in. You may have to use the flathead to kind of push that back in. You can give it a pull with the rope itself. Make sure it tucks in there nice. Some of you might actually have the original Honda cap that seals this area up so you don't get corrosion on the rope. I do. So you're going to put that cap on there. Get the flathead on there, get that lip going up a little bit, and it'll cover it right up and sit right in. It's just notched. You'll know if you have it. You'll see how it goes. Now, I can hold this so it doesn't spin, let loose on my vice grip, pull it nice and even and smooth, so that way I don't get any binds in it, and let it recoil it back up. There you go. We just redid this recoil. I'm not going to do the decompression lever cable because I got that set up to work once and I've never been able to get it back in and fully functional after that. And you know, if you have a worry of your rope snapping again, there ain't no sense in trying to do it because you'll be back in there in a heartbeat and you'll have to fight with it to get that setup going. Now I keep this cap on, this decompression cable cap, because it keeps water out of my pole start. Because we get a lot of rain up here in Montana and I really don't like dealing with rust if I don't have to. And usually they don't come out real nice the first time, so they get a little tore up. But as long as it'll sit in there and it'll stay, it'll keep the water out. So I've got it back in and blocking off that hole. And this pole start, it's got a nice little bit of bite to it, a nicely greased up rope, and it's ready to go back on the trike. But be sure to put your gasket back. You're ready to go. My next video I'll be doing a 125M pole start that doesn't have a greased rope. It has quite a bit of rust in there. So I'll let you guys go from there with that one. Thank you for watching.